Hey all, it's Nim or Nimicree if you're feeling professional, and welcome to the YouTube video. Now today, we're going to be talking about something that is foundational to my beliefs. I figured since I uprooted my professional and my actual life, it's time to take an examination of one of my founding principles, and that is the Paladin. Why does that character archetype speak to me so well? Why do I have signifiers like, Paladin mug? The 1-year subscriber pin that I give to people in addition to a personalized letter. And to protect from cosmic threats, of course, the Bulwark of Azeroth. It's an actual gym bag that I use, so when I go into the gym, everybody's like, what's up? Until the fitness staff say, oh, that's a YouTuber. And as soon as they say that, the other gym patrons are like, oh, I get it. Okay, he's a little off kilter. That's fine. But while I'm setting up the rest of my life, I figured we could examine something that's foundational and maybe just fracture all of it together. If you like the video, or if you like what I do, go on and hit subscribe and leave a comment, follow, like, that helps out against the almighty algorithm. And of course, for those who wish to go above me on the Call of Duty, there is Patreon, and that's patreon.com/Nimicree. Without further ado, let's examine why the Paladin. Let me take you back. I was a young Nim, very excited to go to a comic book store with the cool college kids who used to babysit me. They'd play Magic the Gathering and Super Mario Brothers and a whole bunch of other things. And one day, I came across a comic book. Blue tights, cape, red S on the chest, and it just stuck with me. This was the first exposure to the Paladin character archetype I would ever have. And you know it as Superman.
There's a saying on my world. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Superman, of course, is Clark Kent to normal Earthlings, and, of course, is this all-powerful, or at least to Earthlings, all-powerful being that can enact whatever it wants to do. And the best part is that it's helpful. It's not only helpful, it's helpful to a fault. Some of the Golden Age comics have things like, that's un-American. In fact, let's show that on the screen now. Boop. These concepts take what it means to be good and strong and distill it into a single character. Now, of course, Superman is not a real person. No character in fictional media is. But it's aspirational. It's the journey, not the destination. Same thing with weightlifting. Same thing with martial arts. In fact, to quote Bruce Lee, I believe he said something like that. It's the journey, not the destination. Now, of course, you have to understand, too, Superman pretends to be a normal person, sees or hears distress, and then, boop, takes care of it. Comes in, wah, very much, saving the day, punching the bad guy. Let's show a clip. Boop. Now that the clip has been shown, and we saw him punching the very powerful bad guy, you have to understand that as a small child, right, and I'm not even that tall right now, I'm 5'7", so officially short king status, and someone who has glasses, and someone who was nerdy, this character who could then be like, no, I'm gonna do good. I'm not going to let the world beat me down. I'm gonna stand, and more importantly, I'm gonna fight it. And I'm gonna do what's right. That spoke to me. So I want to draw a very important distinction here. And it's that a paladin is peaceful, right? But not a pacifist. So peace through superior understanding is the first goal. If you read Superman comic books, especially in the Gold and Silver Age, a lot of times it's not solved by, to quote Grand Line Review, punch fighting. It's solved through clever wordplay or trickery or something that is non-violent. Superior understanding. We can see this most exemplified with Mr. Mxyzptlk, a being from the 5th dimension who likes to come down and just torment Superman. Let's picture him now. Boop. There we go. So now that we've pictured Mr. Mxyzptlk, the only way to send him back to the 5th dimension is to get him to say his name backwards. Well, Mxyzptlk is a super hard name to say backwards. And being that he is from the 5th dimension, he's basically a god. But he likes to come down and mess with the big blue Boy Scout. Ultimately, every time Superman wins, he has to trick him into saying something. It's not a punch fight battle. It's not a contest of will and strength and I'm gonna take these hits. It's superior understanding. It's peaceful, not pacifism. After a few years, I ended up moving. Of course, those gentlemen graduated college and went on to have productive lives, assuming I haven't spoken to them in years and I don't even know where they are. But I moved to a place called Jessup Road in Ohio. Now, I ended up living next to a lazy 8th grader as my nearest neighbor and closest in age to be a peer. He had a Super Nintendo. He had a lot of RPG games. He did not like them, and he did not like to read. So, one day, he says, Nim, why not mow the front and backyard, and I'll give you Final Fantasy 2 and 3. And then if you mow it next week, I'll let you keep them forever. So, me, as an 8 or 9-year-old, was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that right now. Because I loved video games. They have a hold on my life, and I love them. And so I mow the grass, and he's thinking, oh, great, he's not going to enjoy the game. I got somebody to mow the grass twice. It's fantastic. And I was hooked. Little did I know that I was just going to be exposed to my second instance of the Paladin archetype, Cecil from Final Fantasy. Now, let's watch a small clip. Boop.
Lord Captain, we're nearly to the barren border.
So we are.
The trouble's here, too. Orders may be orders, but this goes too far.
Now that we've seen the small clip, we can see that Cecil starts off as this dark knight, wielding a sword of evil, wondering if his path is all wrong. Now, he is strong and competent and brave, but he's also troubled because he has to keep assuaging his troops. No, we're doing the right thing. This is for the land of Baron. This is for our peace and prosperity. Well, eventually, he questions the king, and the king, in his capricious nature, fires him. So he has to go deliver a package to the town of Mist. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire story there. That's something you can do if you really want to. I recommend Final Fantasy IV very highly. It is an excellent, excellent game. Eventually, though, through a series of plot points, you end up back at the town that you were in the intro. You're still a Dark Knight. You're alone. You have no airship. You have nothing. Let's take a look at that clip now. Boop. So now that we've seen that clip, Cecil is going to mount ordeals to become a paladin, because a sword of evil can't beat evil. You need a sword of light, at least in this world. So he goes to mount ordeals, and through fighting various enemies, including a boss, he gets to the Cave of Ordeals and becomes a paladin. In order for it to stick, though, he has to fight his former darkness. Let's take a look at that clip. Boop.
Forsake the darkness you once embraced, or the light will find no hope. Vanquish the Dark Knight. You and he are one no more. are two of them.
What's happening? Knuckle, look out!
Stay back. This is a fight for me and me alone. My atonement for all the sins I wrought, my test. And one I do not mean to fail.
After coming to terms with his past, he has a singular purpose. And it's with that he walks a new path as a paladin. So now it's time to draw that second important lesson. The path of the paladin is chosen, not forced. The person decides to live this way, and it can come with some pain, especially when confronting your own mistakes. I personally try to live like that. I have a general test that works well, and it's, can I look at myself in the mirror in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth, when all pretension is gone, when I don't have to entertain or impress or educate or inform anybody, it's just me and me looking at the mirror, trying to clean my teeth to make sure they don't rot. If I can do that, then I'm at least starting there. After that, it comes to, how do I do good in the world? How do I do more good in the world? How do I help? How do I do this in a sustainable way? Because you can't pour water from an empty cup. So I can't just give all of my internal organs and help 9 people and then die. That doesn't work. I have to help people. So again, the paladin path is chosen, not forced. And it can be a hard one to walk. And the best paladins don't scorn people who sometimes fall short. Remember, the difference between failing and succeeding is trying. Because if you never try, that means you're never going to succeed. And if you never fail, then you never tried. Because to try to live up to an ideal, we're all human. We're all fallible. Me included. You included. Sometimes you fail. The important part is, you get up and you try again. And you walk that path. Now we come to the third experience with Paladin archetype, the Tabletop RPG Paladin. So, full disclosure, I was born at the tail end of the Satanic Panic, when there were hearings about heavy metal turning children into, I don't know, some type of amorphous, ill-defined demon, and that was a thing. Luckily, I grew up in Cincinnati, so I was always 20 years behind. So growing up, I wanted to play D&D, but certain family members considered it to be satanic, or I'd worship the devil, or something like that. And to be fair to them, a bunch of young men and their girlfriends sitting around a table, rolling dice and doing basic math and strategy, does indeed sound like a harrowing and horrifying experience. I am sure that's what they thought. So, moving on to my better decision with my life. Late middle school, early high school, I was finally able to play some Dungeons & Dragons at a local comic book shop. It was interesting to come across a character class that was not only incentivized to be good, as, role-playing strategies and rewards and things like that, but actually, you needed to follow a certain code of conduct. You had to be lawful good. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's not a, maybe this or that. No, you gotta be lawful good. The very typical knight in shining armor. Being able to roleplay out conflicts in a way that didn't violate a moral code taught me that even though the paladin is limited in their approach, you can't be evil, you can't be chaotic, there are ways to be flexible in your approaches. For example, I remember there was a time where we needed to save some farmers from some raiders. Pretty simple quest as a campaign hook, but by convincing the raider boss that it would be easier and more profitable to work together with the village as their security, we were able to create a symbiotic relationship, and that particular town would pop up in other campaigns as a city based on mutual benefit. So ideally, we went in there, we're ready to, stop that raider boss, and one of our members, it wasn't me, I would take credit if it was like, what if we try to negotiate with him? Oh, okay, fine. And so what we did is, while the raiders were ready to fight, and they were always starving, though. They were always very, very hungry because they didn't farm, and the only way to get food was to take it from people. And farmers, not very good at fighting, but generally very hardy and well-fed, at least compared to the raiders, had the stamina to outlast them. So what we did is, we ended up, okay, well, you guys work as security, you guys work as your standard thing, and we're going to have city, and it's going to be great, it's going to be prosperous. And eventually someone was like, well, what if the raiders turn on the farmers after they have the food? Well, we worked on building fortifications and working on basic combat training with the farmers in the off-season so that they could at least be familiar with how to hold a sword. And of course, we did that while the raiders were out on their patrols, clearing the landscape of dangerous beasts. That way, if there was a, double cross, the farmers were like, haha, I'm already ready for that. But by being able to do that, we were able to work within the framework of law and good. Official treaties were signed, mutual benefit occurred. This is important, and this allows me to draw the third very important lesson, which is a paladin works to spread good laws for the collective and does good for the individual. So a paladin is not blindly lawful, but understands that personal efforts are often needed to help out individuals until a greater system can catch up. Basically, I create a law, right? Boom, or a process. Awesome. It takes a little while for that law to go into effect, or that process to take effect. What do we do in the meantime? If you do nothing, people will slip through the cracks. So you have to, through personal effort, push things along and help people. As opposed to just being like, well, we made the thing, and it'll take effect, and we're done. No. There's more to it than that. You have to be an active steward and caretaker. You can't just be passive and hands-off. Also, the paladin does not ignore the usefulness of the law when it comes to helping people, as official action is hard to walk back in civilized societies. So, there can be a problem with a certain process. People want to stick to that process. People want to stick to that law. People want to do these things. Put in your favorite historical tragedy into that box. People want to keep doing this. Then, after a war and some laws get passed, they can no longer do their chosen tragedy in that box. People still want to do that tragedy. People still want to make sure that they can do that. But because of the law and the efforts that it took to create and maintain it, they can't. There are penalties. It's extremely hard to walk back. So remember, a paladin spreads good law and process for the collective and does good for the individual. And now we come to the fourth and final Paladin class archetype experience, the MMORPG Paladin, specifically World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. So, I play a lot of World of Warcraft. I mean, come on. Bulwark Vazanoth. Literally right here. Didn't have to move it. Still there. I love playing the Paladin. My mug's out in the kitchen, but that's not a secret to anybody who watches this channel. But I remember there were two abilities that made me choose the Paladin back in 2005 and 2006. The first was Holy Shock, a spell that was instant cast that let you either do damage to an enemy or heal an ally. At the time, I was playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, so the idea that one spell could do one of two things really spoke to me. I was like, alright, yeah, that's cool, awesome. And then, of course, Divine Shield, or as it's colloquially known, Bubble. The fact that for 8 seconds, I can just say, no, not taking any damage, not dealing with this. I loved that. Those two abilities are what made me roll a Paladin. And I was a Holy Paladin in Vanilla. I believe a Holy Paladin / Ret in Burning Legion. I did some tanking in Wrath of the Lich King and was a Holy Paladin. Finally, in Cataclysm, I got tired of people not knowing how to tank, so I started tanking all the way up through Warlords of Draenor, and I've been basically a Ret main ever since. So I love the Paladin. Big fan of the Paladin. And one of the coolest things about the MMORPG Paladin is that there are these quests that have Paladin flavor, right? So, for example, back in Classic or Vanilla and technically pre-Cata World Revamp, there was a quest you could get from the Archbishop in the Chapel of the Light as a human, or as an Alliance member. I played as Alliance most of my time in WoW. Where you had to take the symbol of resurrection and go resurrect Hen's Falk, little dwarf on a standing stone / memorial island. That place was dangerous at low levels because it had the Defias Rogue Wizards and Murlocs. It was a very dangerous place early game. A lot of people died there. But you get there, you use the symbol of resurrection, you go back, you turn the quest, and bam! You learn redemption. You're out of combat res. Such a big deal because now you're not just a warrior with some holy flavor. You're like, no, we can rewind this. Come on back, friend. Let's go. Let's get it back here. Now, granted, it wasn't a battle res, but that's all right. Later, I started playing Final Fantasy XIV, and I, of course, chose the Paladin. The Paladin there is only sword and board tanking. And they had a lot of quests, too, to become a free Paladin, the Sultana Sworn, all those things. It was very cool to unlock abilities through that job crystal and learn and follow that, all those stories. But one thing I want to draw out of this is, again, the immunity. Because the Paladin in Final Fantasy XIV has an immunity called Hallowed Ground. It's about 8 seconds, if I remember correctly, of immunity, and it stacks up with Bubble, which is, of course, Divine Shield. So the same thing. And that's never really explained in the canon. Easy explanation is, oh, it's the light, oh, it's the ether, oh, it's the, whatever. That's you, and you're just using that to basically block all harm for yourself. Okay, sure. I tend to actually read it as that is your conviction and your resolve to carry on and do what's right made manifest. And the reason why it only lasts 8 seconds is because to draw on that part of yourself, it's tiring. It's exhausting. It's almost impossible, even for those who live that life. If you're like, I'm here to help and sacrifice and do everything I can to promote good and law, you can't do that too much. It will burn you out. So the final important distinction is that a paladin is steadfast in their examined convictions. Once the decision has been made, few things can hope to alter a paladin's respective mission. Now, I want to draw a very important demarcation here. It is not unthinking zealotry, but the position of a considered bulwark. We must remember that even in this crusader mindset, the paladin is still working for law and good. You can't make these moral sacrifices like, well, I'll cut through all these innocent villagers to get to the bad guy and then stop and that'll save the rest of the king. No, you have to work around it. You have to still maintain the aspects of law and good. You have to examine your things because here's the thing. Your word generally is part of an honor code, so you can't be giving it frivolously. Your actions are going to be measured, judged, and more importantly, talked about. And with these 4 distinctions that I made, of course, being peaceful, not a pacifist, having the path chosen, not forced, spreading good laws for the collective and good works for the individual, and of course, being steadfast in my examined convictions, I try to live that way every day. And I'd like to think, and of course, depending on who you ask, you may get a different answer, that makes me a better person overall. So there we have it. Right there, guys. Hopefully a shortish look at why the Paladin character archetype speaks to me. Why I try to live up to that standard, even though I often fail, and I get up and I try again. And funny enough, each time it gets a little easier. I hope you found the video entertaining and enlightening. Of course, my social media plugs. You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Nimicry. You can find me on Twitter at Nimicry. And then, of course, there's a Discord link down below in the description if you feel like chatting at a more extensive level. This was a very fun and somewhat enlightening video for myself to make, so I hope you enjoyed it, and may the mount you're farming drop on the first kill.